88.7 FM. Online, gobrave.org. A tune-in radio station, part of the William Patterson Broadcast Network.
Broadcasting live from Hobart Hall in Wayne, New Jersey. This is the innovative.
I think they're really unique.
The fearless. They have awesome variety. The kick-ass.
I love Brave New Radio.
The sensational.
I've never heard anything like it.
This is the one and only Brave New Radio.
This show are solely those of the host and guest and are not necessarily supported by WPSC 88.7 FM, station management, or the station owner, William Patterson University. Anyone wanting to offer differing opinions may do so by calling the show at 973-720-2738. Abusive callers will be rejected. Now here's your program on WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio.
Welcome to the 7 o'clock hour. As I told you, we switched the formats a little bit. Normally, I have my guest in the 6 o'clock hour, but every now and again, we switch our time slots. And it gave me the opportunity this morning to do some commentary and to play some music for you. I had fun with the commentary. I really did. And as I said, it's not a matter of bashing our president. He bashes himself. I don't have to do that. He does that enough for himself. But at the same time, I did have the opportunity to point some things out to you that if you hadn't thought about, which I'm quite sure if you're a logical, reasoning person and you're looking at some of the stuff that's going on, some of the things that I said had to have come to your mind. Now, whether you said it or not is a different story, but it had to have come to your mind as you watch the shenanigans that are going on in Washington, D.C., coming out of the White House. There is an insurance company that has a very funny ad out, and the punchline is you answer the question with, you can save X number of percentage by switching to whoever the insurance company is. And the question they ask is, it's like a game show, like a trivia show. Like, what color is the White House? And the contestant is actually struggling answering that question. I mean, the question is, what color is white? And every time I hear that commercial, for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, Donald Trump pops into my head as being that contestant, that they're actually asking him what color is the White House, and he's struggling with that answer. If you hear the ad, you'll know what I'm talking about. But again, it's 7 o'clock hour. I'm going to share the weather with you. My guest has called in. She is on the line. And interestingly enough, she's an independent artist as well in terms of being an author and a spoken word artist. The music that you're listening to is my own music as an independent artist. So you have two independent artists on the air this morning. And I've known my guest now for a few years. We actually are colleagues. We work together. And what I didn't realize was that she was the author of a book. And once we were having a conversation and she shared with me that she authored a book, I said, oh, well, I have to get you on my radio show. So let me share the weather with you real quickly of what's going on in the Wayne, New Jersey area. And then my interview with my special guest this morning will begin. Let's see if we can pull the weather up. For some reason, every week now, this thing on the computer, the weather be having a ball. It just doesn't want to register for whatever reason. Right now, it's 47.4 degrees. We're working our way up to a high of 51, cloudy with periods of rain. Then tonight, rain early, then remaining cloudy with showers overnight. 100% chance of rain during the day and the evening. Then tomorrow, Sunday, Mother's Day. Again, happy Mother's Day to all of you out there. Partly cloudy in the morning, increasing clouds with periods of showers later in the day. 65 is a high, 49 is a low. Monday, partly cloudy and windy. High of 63, 49 as a low. And then on Tuesday, a mainly sunny sky, high around 75, low of 54. Clear skies on Tuesday night. Rounding out the forecast on Wednesday, 85 as a high, 65 as a low, mainly sunny. And that is our weather brought to you right here from the WP 88.7 FM Weather Center. Well, my guest this morning she has a couple of names, but her name is Celeste Ragland. She goes by Ragz Ragland. And then there's another name that she has that she shared with us in her email address as well. And she's the author of the book The Dope Show, Off the Leash. It was released in February of 2016. The Dope Show is a publication of a raw and uncensored poetry and verses. It is a versatile collection ranging from topics like love, sex, sensuality to racism, civil rights, domestic violence, motherhood, rape, and more. This collection is written by a language arts and literature teacher of nearly 2 decades, so it provides many delightful literary surprises and allusions, a sophisticated manipulation of words, intricate metaphors, and a bounty of well-crafted figurative language. One might argue that this collection is a unique and eclectic marriage of both urban literature and classic literature. The author draws her inspiration from authors such as Dorothy Parker, Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Geoffrey Chaucer, Sylvia Plath, Christina Rossetti, Ntozake Shange, and more. Any lover of literature will immediately pick up on the many allusions made throughout the text and perhaps be inspired to experiment with writing themselves. While the author is indeed a language arts teacher, she does not use her formal training as a straitjacket for her writing. She believes that poetry should be free and untamed, loyal to the truth and shameless. This collection will surely make you cry, laugh, get angry, and say, wow. It will make you stop everything you're doing and think, all right, it is conscious and unlike any collection of poems you've ever read by any one author. Now, that's the bio of the book, but I'm going to let our guest, Celeste Ragland, tell us a little bit about herself. Ms. Ragland, or Celeste, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am wonderful, thanks. So glad that you rose early on a Saturday morning to join, because I know, like I said, Ms. Ragland is a colleague of mine. We actually work in the same school, so I know we get up early all week. So the fact that you got up early on Saturday morning to join me, I thank you.
Indeed.
So, all right, let's take this. Let's go all the way back to the beginning as to where you, because I know you teach literature and language arts, but where did this love for language arts and everything begin? Was that something like as a child that you like, or that you did in grade school and high school or whatever? Where did that come from?
Oh yes, I've been writing since I was very small, maybe 7, 8 years old. As soon as I could write, I was writing. In fact, I remember a few years ago, my dad, he sent me a package, and when I opened it, it was an old notebook with poetry from like 7th and 8th grade that I had written, and he saved all those years. And when I looked at it, I cringed because it was such old writing, and I had come so far, in my writing abilities. But he had saved that writing from 7th and 8th grade, so I've been writing a very long time.
And that we deal with kids every day that just trying to get them to read and write is like water torture. And it's like, you want us to do what? You want me to read? You want me to write? What?
Right.
I mean, so how did you now, as a child coming through, African-American young lady, presumably in an urban school, I don't know, or in school, whatever, where did that love develop from?
Well, my mom was a very artsy woman. And she would have me read even when I didn't want to. And one of the things she did, which I found was interesting, was whatever she was reading, she would have me read. And we would go in the basement and do laundry. And one of the first books that I read, and I couldn't have been any older than 8 years old, was for colored girls who committed suicide when their rainbow was enough. And I was very young, and some of the language in there, of course, is one would say was not appropriate for a child, but my mother wanted me to read. She wanted me to understand certain things, and we would sit by the washing machine and dryer, and this was one of the first books that she had me reading. And she would always have a book, and she would always share with me. And if she didn't have a book, she'd be watching some documentary on TV, and she would want me to come pay attention to that and share. So it just got to a point where I was always reading something with her, or I was always being forced to learn about something new. And if I couldn't figure it out, then I had to go look it up. And it just became something that I enjoyed instead of something that I dreaded.
That's an interesting point. There's a couple interesting points that you made there. One, and we say this all the time. I know I say this, and it was a mantra in my house, and it still is a mantra, and that is, it starts in the home. And most of my guests, I've been doing this 16 going into the 17th year now. Most of my guests who are authors, somewhere along the way, they had somebody in their house that instilled reading and writing into them one way or the other. Either it was done by modeling, they watched their parents do that, or as you just described, where their parents said, I want you to read with me. I'm going to read, you're going to read, or Or
Right.
you're going to read whether you want to or not until you begin to love it. And then, like you said, it's not a drudgery. It became a joy. And see, that's why I have problems with teachers who use reading and writing as a punishment, because you don't want kids to associate being punished with
Right.
something that should be enjoyable. Reading and writing ought to be enjoyable, just like playing a video game or anything else. So that's why I don't like teachers or anyone to, make writing and reading or any of the academic disciplines a punishment, because you don't want to associate being punished with something that should be enjoyable. So you just said you began to love it and like it. And even though, and see the language thing, I'm with you. I understand, because in literature, which when we're going to work our way up to your book, there are some things like literary license. Like maybe it might not be appropriate for a conversation with me and you, or you and a child, but from a literary standpoint, we have literary license to do it in order for you to get the point across. So whenever you get a book like For Colored Girls or Suicide, I remember that was a play on Broadway.
Yes, it was.
Whenever you get something like that, you're taking creative license to make it more real. Like, in other words, in some instances, when you're reading a book, like, people just don't talk like that.
Right. Right.
This is not how people talk all the time. So you try to capture the reality. So I can understand where she was exposing that to you so that you can feel the effect. So, all right, you were writing poetry as a child. What did you write about? Like when you got that notebook of you in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th grade or whatever, what were you writing about at that time?
Wow. Believe it or not, even at that time, I felt like I had been through and it was always going through so much. I was a girl. I only had a bunch of brothers, so I always kind of had this kind of, I guess, loneliness kind of. Me and 4 boys, the only girl. And then at this point, I had lost my grandmother already. I had lost a cousin already to police violence. My dad, at that time, he had a drinking problem, so I was dealing with that. And now he's been sober 25 years.
All right.
So there was just a lot of things that, as a little girl, I felt that I didn't have anywhere to go and didn't have anywhere to put it. So I would just write, and some of it was just so, I guess, it was sad, but it was just very flowery still. But that's where I put a lot of my feelings. I didn't have anywhere to put them. And
writing is an excellent way to do that. As you just heard me say, 16, 17 years now on the air, interviewing probably 200 authors or more. 9 times out of 10, I had folks telling me that writing either in journals or poetry or journaling allowed them the opportunity to get things out of them. That, either they didn't have somebody to talk to, or either it was some things in them that they didn't want to share with anybody, but they wanted to put in a journal. We had a child yesterday, and I'm very sensitive because my journal was breached and it caused a whole lot of trouble.
Wow.
And so I'm very sensitive to that breaching of the journal area. And a child yesterday came in that had taken another classmate's journal and opened it, and the little girl had a fit, and I said, understandably so. And I told him, don't you ever do that again, because whatever is put in a journal is between that person and themselves and God or whoever, but it's not for anybody else's eyes. So don't you ever do that. So I'm saying all that to say, many people have come on the show to say that is exactly how they started writing. It was an avenue for them to get out what was in them. And like you said, I felt like I was by myself. So I guess the journal or your notebook or whatever kind of became your friend.
It really did. And sometimes one of the terms I use, I call it a possession when I'm writing sometimes, because sometimes I can't really pinpoint what it is. It's making me feel so uncomfortable or giving me this tightness in my chest or tightness in my stomach. And I just start writing. And I try to teach a lot of my students, when you feel something and you need to write. And no matter what's coming out, don't stop until you feel like your pen just fell out of your hand. And I just start writing, and I call it possession, because oftentimes I'm writing, and next thing you know, I'm on page 3, and I drop the pen, and I'm full of tears, but I'm done, and I'm breathing, and now I'm ready to get up, and I'm ready to move around. And I had to go back to read what I wrote, because I never go back and polish anything. I never go back and fix. I never struggle over a line. I start until I finish. And I call it like just being possessed, just getting it out, because I don't know what I'm writing until I'm done. But I know that there's something bothering me.
Absolutely.
I know it's something I have to say.
So then when I ask you this question, I pretty much know what the answer is going to be then. And that is, and I've done it. I mean, like I said, I have 2 CDs, musical CDs that's released. I actually play it as background music for the show. But I listen to that CD and I still, to this minute, I'll listen to the song and say, I can't believe I played that. That actually came through me. Like, I don't even remember playing that. So I'm sure as the writer, when you go back and read your stuff, you're like, I don't even remember getting that down.
Exactly. That's very common.
Yeah,
very common.
You go back, like, I wrote that, and you know, I tell people all the time, if you're creative, whatever is music, if it's dance, if it's poetry, it's that creativity coming through you. In other words, you as the human is the tool or the vessel, but the creativity in and of itself is coming through you. And so many times, like you just said, it's almost like you're possessed. It's almost like you don't even realize that is coming through you at the time. It's coming through you. And then when you look back on it, or either listen to it again, it's kind of like, wow.
Right. Right. And I always say, let it be.
Right.
Let it be. Don't go messing stuff up. Let it be.
Right.
And it's funny, my own children, they like art. And I like art, too. I paint a little bit. And my kids, instead of picking up the writing, a lot of them have picked up drawing and art. And sometimes they get so frustrated when they make a little mistake. And I say, that mistake is supposed to be there.
Right.
Keep going. Keep going. And that's just the way I feel with the writing sometimes. Keep going. It's supposed to be that way.
All right. For those of you, if you just joined us, we moved the reading circle to 7 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. My guest this morning is Celeste Ragland, and we're talking about writing and reading because we're working our way up to her book, The Dope Show, Off the Leash. That was the book that was released last year, about a year or so ago. It says February 25th, 2016. So somewhere in the 2016 time frame, it was released, and it is a poetry book. So we're working our way up to how did this book come about? And we're talking with Celeste in terms of where did the writing and everything begin? And as we can see, as we work our way through, it started whenever she was a child. So when you got to high school, because I know high school is especially for girls, and I'm not necessarily saying girls are the only ones who write poetry, because they're not. I've had authors on the show, males, who were poets, and I asked them the question, well, you know, was there ever any concern about somebody thinking you were soft, or you know, as you know, you're a boy writing poetry? Did you ever like think the other brothers would think you were soft or whatever, or did you ever think the girls would be like, no, he said, let me tell you something. If you're a brother who can write poetry, you have all the women you want.
Yep.
And I'll never forget. And this was years ago. This was like, but it cracked me up the way he said that. He's like, if you can write poetry, he said, never had that thought at all. So I'm not saying girls are the only ones who write poetry, because they're not. But generally in that high school area, that's whenever the writing really kind of kicks in. Did you continue to write when you got in high school?
Oh, yeah. Big time. By high school, of course, I had to write other assignments, and I was good at that, writing my papers and things like that. I was editor of the newspaper. I was editor of the literary magazine. So writing has always just been like everything, for me. So in high school, I wrote too, a lot. That's actually, believe it or not, that's when I really started doing the spoken word.
Right.
I would actually go to New York, and sometimes by myself, and find little places, and I would just go read, just practice. So, yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up spoken word, because that's where I was going next in terms of, because I'm trying to think, when we call it, I don't even know if we knew it as that name whenever I was a kid, because spoken word came out, and that's because I guess by the time we came through, the term rap had now kind of taken over. When spoken word and poetry always was kind of around, and it really kind of took off whenever you had like the Jill Scotts and a few more folks. I'm trying to think of some of the other
they would call it an open mic.
Right,
People were
that's
free
it.
To get up and do whatever they wanted to do.
That's exactly right. It was called open mic. That's right. And then so the real name of it was like spoken word, and that's when folks get up. And a few months ago, I saw this young lady. It was at a church talent show, as a matter of fact, and she did a spoken word. The piece was like almost a half-hour piece. She didn't miss a beat. And it was, you talk about strong.
Amazing.
It was amazing. I mean, she had no paper in front of her. And the body language and the expressions and the tone and everything was there. And the piece, like I said, it was a good 20 minutes to a half hour piece. And she went through that thing like nothing. And so when it's done effectively, it is powerful. It really is, because there's message in there. Like, if you're listening to it, because the whole piece on that whole 30 minutes is something about love. It was like the love of self, and she was a female, so it was like loving herself as a woman, and it got into a whole bunch of different things. It got into religion, it got into men, it got into sex, it got into a whole bunch of things in that half hour piece. But she delivered that thing, and for those of you listening on, anytime we've had a poet on the air, if they've read their work, we don't clap our hands, we snap our fingers. We do the finger snaps, like popping your fingers, they call it.
Okay.
That's how you applaud spoken word in poetry. You don't applaud by clapping your hands, you applaud by snapping your fingers. So if you ever go to one of those spoken word houses, you'll hear, whenever the person's finished, you'll hear everybody snapping their fingers. But so yes, and I was listening to last weekend, I was listening to James Brown. And truly, whenever you listen to James Brown and his music, they were the original rappers. They were. I mean, we thought coming along we were, but if you listen to James Brown and the stuff they were doing, yeah, they were rapping at that time as well. So the spoken word. So now, did you actually go up on the stage to perform your work, or were you just going to listen?
I did both. And I was always very nervous when I went up, but I would always have someone saying, go, it's okay, go. And I would get up and just get it done and over with. And that's the best way to get yourself out there, get it done and over with. And you'll find that a lot of the artists, they're very supportive. And they'll sometimes take you under their wing, and you never feel bad leaving the stage. So it worked. It worked.
When at this time, when you were doing all this, did you ultimately say at some point you wanted to write a book, or is that just something that happened, or did you say, or was it always your goal to be an author, and teaching and everything else just kind of came along the way? Which is it?
Oh, I always knew that I would write. I guess I always knew I would write poetry. I've started novels that I need to finish. Don't tell anyone. But I've always known that I was going to write a book, but believe it or not, I wanted to write for a newspaper. I wanted to do journalism. And I had written for a newspaper called the Urban Times. Must have been like 20 years ago. And I remember having to do certain articles, and I remember being dropped off to get these news stories, and everyone closing the door in my face. And then after everyone closed the door in my face, I had to go back home and figure it out. And when I went back home, I figured out that I'm not doing this anymore.
Right.
I'm done. Everyone hates me. No one wants to talk. And from there, I went into teaching.
And you talk, right, and you're teaching the area that you had the love for, which was the language arts and the literature. So that works because, and as I said a few minutes ago, and again, I can't speak. I've only had one experience in terms of type of school I've worked in. So I don't know, maybe in some other areas, maybe it's a little bit easier. So I don't think so, but I never know. But to try to get children to understand the importance of reading and writing, and that it can actually develop into a love. It is I know the kids we deal with every day, it is a tough sell. For some of them, they get it. Some of them, they may not have the ability per se, or they haven't practiced enough to show that they can really do it well. But some of them at least have the heart to say, yeah, this is something I want to do. But the bulk of them is like, oh, why are you making me do this? You want me to what? You want me to read? Oh, I hate reading. Right. Oh, how long? I know the question you get on that. Miss Ragland, how long is this got to be? Is it one?
And every time they ask me, I give them some ridiculous answer. 22 pages. Now, don't ask me. Because if you're worrying about how long it has to be, you're not worrying about the quality.
That's correct. He's like, okay, look, I want a 5-paragraph every. 5 paragraphs? That's a lot.
Exactly.
I taught language arts, so I know that's when I was teaching, that was my field as well. I was a language arts. I taught 8th grade language arts, so I know. Mr. Medley, how long you want this to be? You're kidding, right? No, I'm not kidding. That's how long it's supposed to be.
My greatest joy was teaching the 12th grade, 11th and 12th. We did British literature and American literature. And at first they thought I was crazy, but they got used to it. 10-page papers, yes. MLA format, you need your resources, you need your works cited page. And after a while, they actually loved it.
Well, and see, you're right. And some of it is an approach. Because the last book, when I was teaching 8th grade, the last book that I was always doing, I knew it was on the high school level. I didn't care. They were 8th graders. I know you're going to get this book in high school. I would do the Scarlet Letter.
Okay.
And in the beginning, it is a difficult read when the book opens. But as you get deeper into it, the plot really does thicken, and the kids kind of at some point they say, "Whoa, this is a baby mama drama." Yeah, it is, and now they got interested. It clicked in for them then, And we would do things like we would actually make the letter A, and they would paint it red, and they'd have to wear it all day walking around the school. And people would ask, why?
People would ask, they have to explain. They don't even realize what's going on.
Exactly. but yeah, we would do the Scarlet. That would be about this time, as a matter of fact. After I got finished the Diary of Anne Frank, we'd go into the Scarlet Letter, and so about this time of year, we would do that as kind of like our last book of the year. But it really is a matter of getting kids interested and to understand that this is something that you can love and enjoy. And the other thing about reading and writing, they can take you around the world and you never leave your seat.
Yeah, that's true.
There were places that now as an adult, and I've traveled and I've visited, that I had read about years ago. I had already been there because I knew what I read about it or either wrote about it. So the other thing I find is, and you said it earlier, and I'm looking at it in terms of who influenced you. I'm looking at Edgar Allan Poe. I'm looking because he was dark.
Oh yeah, but I'm kind of dark too. So
right, and so where I was going with the whole thing is some of our best writers, some of our best preachers, some of our best teachers have been folks who've really gone through some hard times and some struggles.
You're right.
And
right.
Some of our best preachers are folks that as they were kids really had it bad, really had it hard. Some of our best writers are the same way, that once they get it down on paper, it's because of those struggles as to why they're so effective and why they're so good as a writer or what have you. So I heard you say earlier some of the things you were going through as a child. I was the only girl. I was lonely. I was this. I had these. That's what makes, I'm quite sure, and I haven't read the poems in there yet. We'll do a couple of them while we're on, if you have the book in front of you. But that's what I'm sure put the power in the poem.
Oh, I can guarantee you that. And I had to learn, not to clean it up, not to play it safe, because, let's say 15, 20 years ago, I would play it safe. And, I still probably had the same point, but not the same power. And eventually I had to tell myself, don't play it safe, because there's someone who feels the way you feel, and they're not saying it in the nicest way possible.
Right.
When they're banging on walls, they're not speaking in proper language, and they're not editing the cuss words. And so don't play it safe. Say it how you feel it, because other people need to read it the way you feel it, so they feel safe in their feelings. And you need to be comfortable and confident when you're having your feelings, so that you're not suppressing them. So now, that's why it's called Off the Leash, because it's gone. It's wild. It's untamed.
Oh, absolutely. And see, that's why I was saying in the introduction when we were talking, in writing and movies or whatever, you do have creative license, and the intent is not to offend. But in reality, when folks get angry, not everyone is able to not curse. Not everyone is not able to not yell or scream. And I know there are folks out there that try to pretend like, oh, well, you could. No. That's just not. I tell folks all the time, because even you probably can tell the Mr. Medley or the Mark that you're talking to this morning is different from the one that's in the school. It's a different role. In that role, I have to be this. In this role, I can be that. But there are times, regardless of what the role is, you lose it.
Right.
So, when you're capturing an experience, you put down what the experience is. It's not always sanitized. is not always the little perfect version, and no, people don't get angry and everyone talks nicely and calmly and no, it's not that. So whenever you're dealing with poetry books or film or fiction or what have you, or even for that matter, even if you read an auto, I love behind the scenes. I love to read, especially like with the presidents and everything, the behind the scenes stuff when they start writing their memoirs and their autobiographies, because what you see on front in the camera is not what went on in the White House before they got on camera.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And those are the things I love to read. I love to read those behind the scenes. I love to read when they were angry as heck and they had to come out in front of that microphone and pretend like they were happy as heck. That's where I get a kick out of reading all of those types. But it's the same thing. Whenever you're reading you're writing your poetry, whatever, you're capturing what that really feels like. Have you ever had anybody read your book, come to you and say, "Girl, that was me"?
Oh, lots of times. And, what was interesting is that the last person who said that was actually a male. And I was very surprised. And I guess I shouldn't have been. But he was just very appreciative of the tone that I took and the way that he just said he really connected to the wording. And he's felt, similar many, many times. So that I really appreciated.
Well, that's a very good point that we could talk a little while on. If that's what the topic was. We're going to be talking about your book, but I run into too many women who don't think men have feelings. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, like you can't have it both ways. On the one hand, I want a man who's sensitive. And then on the other hand, when you get a man that has feelings, oh, well, you need to just get over it.
Mm-hmm. Man up, they say, right?
Right. Exactly. It's like, well, wait a minute. The same way you feel is the same way I feel. The same way women have feelings are the same way men have feelings. Now, I know we've been socialized. The man had, like you just said, man up. Men have to be tough, so forth. But the truth of the matter is, as human beings, we all have the same emotions. And the same thing that you don't want done to you as a female, most men don't want done to them, and vice versa.
That's true.
So I can understand, the guy ready to say, I feel that. Because men have feelings too. I mean, they try to pretend like they don't, but the truth matters they do.
It's just sometimes if I'm doing like a show, and let's say I pick out one piece in particular, someone might hear that one piece and think, "Oh God, she hates this man," or "She hates men." But if you really haven't been exposed to the different pieces that I write, or have been, exposed to the journey, you really couldn't say. You would probably base what you heard. Base everything on that one poem you heard. But it was a good thing that he had gone through the book and reviewed it, because, it gave him a full insight. And that's important to know about this book in particular. It's not just one thing. It's not one topic. It's not just for women. It's not just, for men or against this act or that act. It's coming from so many different places.
Right. All right, for those in the listening audience, we're going to take a very short break. We're not going anywhere. You know what to do. I tell you all the time, get on all your social media sites. Let someone know Celeste Ragz or C-Ragz Ragland is on the air with me. We're talking about her book, The Dope Show, Off the Leash. That's what we're talking about. So get on all your social media sites, every last one of them that you're on. Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, on down the line, Snapchat, you name it, whatever you're on it, get on there and tell them to tune in to GoBrave.org and WP 88.7 FM so they can hear C-Ragz Ragland. We're talking about her book, The Dope Show, Off the Leash, as the kids can say, off the chain. Mm-hmm.
I really didn't feel safe anymore at home.
Every year, tens of thousands of youth experience homelessness.
The possibility of sleeping out on a park bench, it's not something that a 15-year-old should have to think about.
1-800-RUNAWAY provides 24-hour access to a nationwide network of housing and support services.
I felt such warmth. I felt comfort. I felt safe.
Call 1-800-RUNAWAY. Go to 1-800-RUNAWAY.org or text 66008. We can end youth homelessness.
Swimming pools can be lots of fun,
But they can be dangerous too, especially for young children. Always practice simple safety steps to prevent tragedies. Fence all pools. Teach kids to swim. And always watch them around water.
No horseplay.
Simple steps save lives. To learn new life-saving steps, visit poolsafely.gov. A public service message from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Welcome back to the Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. Ms. Ragland, you still with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I see the telephone lighting up to me. I just wanted to make sure you didn't get dropped.
Okay.
So, I was sharing with you earlier, a listening audience, when I was playing the other song that was one of my favorites, What Could Have Been. I told you the other one is Respect Your Father. That's what's playing right now, is Respect Your Father. One of my favorites. It's really, anytime you create anything, and Miss Ragland can attest to this, it's hard to say which would be your favorite. Because just like with your kids, you can't really say, that's my favorite child. Like, they're all your favorites.
Right.
But this particular song that's playing, and there was one I played a little bit early, those two, just the way everything just came about, really kind of put them up there, if there is such a thing, in my favorite category. But so that's what you hear in the background, is Respect Your Father. And my guest this morning is Celeste Ragland, C-Ragz Ragland, and she's the author of The Dope Show, Off the Leash, and we've been talking about that. So we've gone through grammar school, we've gone through high school, college, teaching, so forth and so on, spoken word. We're talking about it, and we're going to get into when you decided to now write the book. What kind of went through your mind? What was your process for now? You know what? I got all this stuff in my head. I got my collection of poems from where did you start?
I started thinking that I was behind. That's where I started. I said I was behind. I should have done something with this already. It should be completed already. I had another little book, and I had rushed it out because I had a networking event. Me and a couple of people that I worked with, we put together a networking event in Hudson County for different small businesses. And I needed a product at this networking event, so I put together a quick little pamphlet of my poetry and had it published really quickly for that purpose. And I really wasn't satisfied. And meanwhile, in my computer and all of my files, I had hundreds of pieces. So I decided, I'm going to do this, right now. I need to get it done. And I gave myself about a 3-week deadline. And I started working, and I got it done in that time. I just felt like I was behind, and I needed to make it happen.
Did you self-publish, or you went to a publishing house, or how did? Because I'm looking at it, and I see the cover and everything on there. And
I self-published through Create Space with Amazon. So I designed the cover, did the format and everything myself.
And see, I'm looking at it, and we were talking about spoken word a few minutes ago. And at the school last year, we had our first. Last year, the talent show was called the I Am Experience. And Ms. Ragland, as well as a few other teachers, they really got together and got the kids really engaged in this project. And this year, we've taken on our second year. It has a different name. This year is Believe.
Imagine and Believe.
Imagine and Believe. And where I'm going with this is, we were talking about how difficult to a degree it is to get kids to do some of this stuff. But then again, it's not that difficult because they're not exposed to it, because the way the curriculum and everything is set up, we really have these kids, the only thing they get, and not necessarily a positive way, is language arts math test, language arts math test, language arts math test. That's pretty much kind of like their school day. Not that they don't get the other subjects, they do, but the two main focus areas is language arts and math. But it's almost to a degree counterproductive the way we roll it out. Language arts math test, language arts, the kid really does get to the point where it's like, I hate doing this.
Right.
In a different venue, though, they do flourish. When these kids are now practicing for this performance, it comes out of them. Last year, we had kids do spoken words, no paper, because I'm big on not kids getting up on stage reading. I not necessarily have to memorize it, but they need to know the content and be able to speak without a paper in front of them. Last year, at this talent show that we do, that is now going to be an annual show, we had kids get up there who barely talk, was able to get up there and deliver spoken word pieces. How did you all get them to do that?
Well, believe it or not, they stayed after school, and they wanted to, every day until almost 5 o'clock for about 3 months. And we went over it, and I would show them different clips of different spoken word artists. I would tell them, move your hands. I would tell them, use your voice. I would tell them, yell, we need to hear you. I would tell them, I need to hear your tone change. You need to bring it up, bring it down. I would tell them, you need to feel this. And because of this, I wrote the pieces that they had to perform. I made sure that I wrote stuff from their perspective.
Right.
So I had to go back, be a child, and think about the things that they were going through, in their town, in their homes, or the things they see on TV, the things they see on the news, or the things that bothered me when I was a child, a young child. So I wrote from their perspective. So there was nothing that they had to speak about that they couldn't connect to. And I think that was very important, too. And see, sometimes we want kids to connect to things.
Right.
They just can't. They can't relate to it.
You were going exactly what I was getting ready to say in terms of many people, unfortunately, the powers that be or the whomever, many people don't think that's teaching, when the truth of the matter is that is teaching. Whenever we're getting kids to do spoken word, that is teaching. That is a part of learning. That is a part. Maybe, and I'm not even sure if the jury's out on that, because it may... If we were to be able to teach in that fashion, we might see some of these standardized tests go up. I don't know. But just because it's not on a standardized test does not necessarily mean that it's not educational or not teaching. If you can get a child to perform a spoken word piece that connects and relates to them, the child is engaged. The child connects. The child learns. Now they get an opportunity at some point, maybe one day they write a book or they write a play or what have you. So, but I'm telling you, and for us, it's getting ready to happen again on the 19th. I'm getting ready to do the show again on the 19th of this month. That's next Friday, I believe. We're going to do the performance during the evening. So anybody, if you're in the area, at Napier Academy on 55 Clinton Street, come out, watch the kids. You'll see what I'm talking about. And you just said that you wrote some of the pieces for them. How important is that to the kids to know that their teacher wrote this piece? And I'll connect another question to that, and that is, when this show first started, it was on Friday mornings at 6 o'clock. It was on 6 to 7:30. In many instances, the author would come live into the studio with me, and I would go off after I left here to go to School 6 to teach my class. And I would say, what are you doing after the interview? And they'd say, nothing. Do you mind coming with me so that my kids can meet you? Have you shown your students the book yet? Have you had a copy of the book in the classroom and shown it to them?
I've only shown them the front cover.
That's okay. I mean, they don't have to see the contents, but the fact that they saw fact that they see your picture and your name on the book, and they've seen that.
Yes. They're very amazed.
Yes.
To them, it's like, oh my gosh, you have a book. Look, Miss Ragland's on the internet.
Right.
To them, that's amazing.
Because as much as I think kids don't want to read or don't like to read, like I said, they do challenge that notion, because when I would bring that author into the classroom, they'd lose their minds. Mm-hmm. So they would connect the picture on either the front of the book or the back of the book, or the name and the byline with the person standing in front of them, and they couldn't believe, you're the author? We met an author. So I'm quite sure for them, for you to be able to say, as their teacher, you held up that book and said, this is my book. I don't think you could get a better modeling tool than that.
Right, and it really helped in practices for the show, because they didn't want to let me down. They said, oh, she has a book and she wrote this stuff, and if we don't get this right, her heart's going to be broken. And that, that means a lot to me, and it also helped them push through and be successful at what they were doing.
The other person that works with Ms. Ragland on the show is Mr. Edgar. Is Harold Edgar, and he's a musician. So we had a combination of the creativity was really working there between, we had Edgar, who was a musician, and this year he's doing choreography as well. We also had Miss Ragland, who was doing spoken word, and we had a couple other teachers as well. But a lot of last year's show, because we actually did a video, and the music behind it was written by Mr. Edgar, and the spoken word was written by Miss Ragland. And it really was. I mean, I'm saying to say we have no ideas in our schools. Everybody think, Miss Ragland, that the only thing we do is either principal or teach. They have no idea of our lives outside of school.
Right.
Like I do radio, I write music, I do a whole bunch of different things other than be the principal of a school. But the kids and the parents and maybe even some of the colleagues think that we're very one-dimensional, when the truth of the matter is we're not. And the kids have an opportunity to now see a whole different side of you. Whenever you hold up a book that's yours, say, look, I wrote this. For any of them, did that ever inspire them to say, wow, Miss Ragland's a writer, I want to do that?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And what also helped was with the spoken word, I have a SoundCloud page. And as you was talking about Mr. Edgar, our colleague, he and I worked together last year to start a spoken word CD of my work. And like you said, he did the music, and I did the spoken word, and we put together 13 tracks that we're making a CD out of. But even for the kids to see, she has a SoundCloud, and for them, some of them equated with rap, and they equated with their favorite artist. Oh, my God, Ms. Ragland, you have a song? And then they want to make them. They want to make them, and that's part of the reason why with the show last year we did a music video, because we wanted them to feel like stars.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. And that's critical. I just think in education, and I've said this privately and publicly, I don't have a problem with saying it, I wouldn't trade my time coming through school with these kids coming through school for nothing in the world, because we really were well-rounded. And what I mean by that is we had so many opportunities available to us in terms of various classes. I remember wood shop, home economics, print shop, Photoshop, like you said, working on the newspaper, working on the yearbook, music. That's right. Our music class, choir, so forth and so on. I mean, when I came through, I had a ball in school, and I learned. But in the environment we're in now, as I said a couple of minutes ago, language arts, math tests, language arts, math tests, language arts, math tests. I could see why kids are bored of education. I really could. But then when they get an opportunity to do something different like that show, they take to it like water to a duck. I mean, they take it like water to a sponge. I mean, they really soak it in. I walked in there the other day. It was this little boy that could be a handful, was singing Michael Jackson's "I'll Be There."
Right.
And was singing it too. And so whenever they have the opportunity to see the figures in their life that actually do something else, such as writing a book, playing an instrument, releasing CDs, releasing books, whatever, it is a different experience for them. Were there any challenges? Because you said you put the book together really quick. Were there any challenges for you in terms of putting it together? And now that it's time to market it, because one of the questions I ask my authors all the time, some of the guests, the business side and the creative side, they're okay with both. Some is like, if I didn't have to deal with the business side, I wouldn't. I just want to be the creative. For you, how has it been now trying to get this book in folks' hands, The Dope Show?
If I didn't have to deal with the business side, I wouldn't. It is a pain in the butt. Yeah. And I will admit that sometimes I can be very, in the corner, antisocial, and I'm always thinking, and I always have things going on in my mind, and I don't always want to be out in, the spotlight and doing what I do. So one of the hardest things, I would have to go and perform more on stage, and I would have to bring copies of the book, or I would have to bring cards with, the website and where they can find it. I pushed it on Facebook. I pushed it on, Instagram or any social media site. I would push. And then one of the things I also did was make sure that I supported others. So,
that's right.
You kind of guilt them into supporting you too. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and the minute you stop working, it stops working.
That's right, and that's a key point as well. But the business side of folks, what I'm talking about is whenever it's as an artist, it's two things. It's not that you don't want to make money from your work, but that is not necessarily your main goal. In other words, you would give away. You give away a lot. You would do it but at the same time, you are trying to sell whatever it is, your book or your CD or your what have you. And if you can make some money off of it, great. But that may not be the main intent. But the business side of it is just that. You have to figure out, okay, what kind of accounts do I have to set up? How many do I need to print? And I remember Michael Bazin was saying whenever he first started, he carried his books in his trunk. Everywhere he went, he carried boxes of books in his trunk and would stand there at the train station, this, that, and the other. Matter of fact, in the beginning, he said no publishing house would take him. But then after he started standing on the corners and standing in the train station, this, that, and the other, and the book started moving so well, now the publishing companies were coming to him saying, can we publish a book? And he told them no. Because he's like, I said, hey, look, you know what? You didn't want me whenever I was nobody. Now that the books are selling, now you want me. No, I'm going to keep doing my own thing.
I don't need help anymore. That's right.
Exactly. But that is the business side of it whenever you're trying to push your product. And you're absolutely right. You got to go to the various shows. You got to go to the book shows. You got to, like you said, when you do the spoken word performance, carry the books with you. You got your cards. You're constantly networking and trying to get the book out there to let folks know. They even like doing this interview this morning. Hopefully those of you who are listening and will listen, because the show is recorded, I'll put it on my YouTube site and folks can listen to it later if they didn't rise early, that you'll go out and purchase a copy of the book. The title of it is The Dope Show. It's all one word, DOPESHOW. And the dope she's talking about is not necessarily what might come to mind when we're talking drugs, even though there might be a poem in it that might be drug related. But we're not talking dope. We're talking like how the kids say dope, meaning cool, meaning, fly, meaning like you got to kind of be connected to kid language to know what it's saying. The hip hop language. That's fly, that's cool, that's bad. That's what she's talking about when she said the dope show. Like this show is on. I'm trying to think, let me see, how can we say this properly? That's a wonderful show. That's
right.
The wonderful show.
Oddly enough, I listen to all different types of music. So oddly enough, I love the Marilyn Manson song, don't laugh at me, The Dope Show.
Right.
And one of the main lines in that is, we're all stars in The Dope Show. And it's just about how the spotlight comes down on us when we least expect it, when we want it to, and sometimes we're not always the star. Sometimes it's not always pretty. We're not always the star in role. Sometimes it's a tragedy. Sometimes it's a happy story. So the point is that it's The Dope Show. It's just putting spotlights on all these different aspects, all these different positions you could be in life. And you have to learn to adapt and move through them. And that's, one of the big messages that I push is that we'll all be humble, because you never know what role you're going to be playing today as opposed to tomorrow. We're all stars in The Dope Show, but there's a whole bunch of different roles to be playing. And at some point in life, you're going to play them all.
This is true. And truly, take each day as a gift, because you can be up today, down tomorrow. You could be down today, up tomorrow. It really does flow. Really, literally, like she just said, you could be this one day and that another, and it happens in a blink of an eye. It really does. Mm-hmm. So The Dope Show, and then you got Off the Leash. I told you, I was laughing earlier, like the kids say, that was off the chain, that was off the hizzy, that was off the. Mm-hmm. The kids are funny with the way that they. I have to I really have to stay plugged in to kind of see when they say something what they're talking about. Funny enough, last night I'm listening to an interview on CNN. And it was this professor from, I think it was Georgetown, and another lady and I heard it, he got on there and said, well, I'm going to keep it 100. I said, all right now. Mm-hmm. So then the commentator comes back, well, I'm going to keep it 100 too. Now, I know most of the people in that listening audience or that viewing audience were like, what is he talking about? They were both African American. Right. What are they talking about? I'm going to keep it 100.
Right.
But that's the language. That's what I mean. When we take creative license in writing these poems and stories, you got to be able to connect to the communities and the audiences who are going to read it.
Right.
So I'm looking at as I looked at the bio of the book, and I'm looking at all your various inspirations, and wow, it is a laundry list. Dorothy Parker, Edgar Allan Poe, Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost, Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, Geoffrey Chaucer, Sylvia Plath, Christina Rossetti. So you've read all these people.
Oh yeah. And if you read through the book and you're familiar with them, you'll see little pieces of them. You may see lines that they've used. You might see different allusions to them. But definitely, they're in there. They're all in there.
And see, again, I can totally rate. There is, let's see, as a musician, one of the first song on the CD was inspired by Whitney Houston, her version of Jesus Loves Me. Okay. And there's some licks in this song that's from that. And there's one of the songs I came up with was inspired by Prince. And I'm trying to think of the group that did Bittersweet Symphony, because it's a combination of Bittersweet Symphony and... Is that the group?
Not a newer group. A newer group?
It might be the original ones, but the song is titled Bittersweet Symphony. And that song and Prince, there's a song on my CD that was inspired by those two. I combined them. Matter of fact, on my CD, the title is Ozma's Odyssey, Ozma. That was from The Wizard of Oz. That's where Oz came from in The Wizard of Oz, but it's Ozma's Odyssey. Nice. And you can hear the influence of Prince and that group that did Bittersweet Symphony in there. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find it. Maybe I'll play it. And folks will see what I'm talking about. Let's see. Is it on this one? Yeah, it is. Hold on. Let me find it. And you'll hear it soon as I put it on. Here we go. So you'll hear some flashes of 1999 in there. Whenever I was dreaming when I wrote this, and and you'll hear some of the flashes of Bittersweet Symphony in there too. So I can totally understand what you're talking about when you're talking about you're inspired by these folks that you've read, because I've been inspired by many of the folks that I've heard. So as you did that, and you mixed that in with your own experiences.
Yeah, and some of it might be, weird for people, because if you have someone who's just straight and narrow literature buff,
right,
they might even be angry at me. Like, how dare she take that and mix that in with that? But for me, I'm a literature buff, but right, I'm also, this other person, and I meshed them. With or without permission.
Exactly. I know exactly, because that's exactly what I felt when I did Ozma's Odyssey. That's exactly what I felt. I was like, I love those two songs. I love the works. When I hear one, I think of the other. And now, kind of like you said, you mesh them. And I kind of did the same thing with Whitney Houston's, her version of Jesus Loves Me, because I always loved her version of it, the way she did, and the way they put that together. Another one was, there was a song, You Made a Fool of Me, Tell Me Why, something like that. And now I'm trying to think of his name, but that was another influence.
A movie too. It was in a recent. Was it Love Jones? One of them.
Tell Me Why. Yeah, right. Yes. Right. That's right. So there's one of them in there that was influenced by that. So I know exactly. I'm saying all to say I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of
basketball. It was
of being influenced, right? Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, the book is The Dope Show. Off the Leash. The author is C. Ragland. And you said something that was very important a couple of minutes ago, and that was that we as artists have to support other artists. So what I always do is I always get a copy. Whoever's on the show, I wind up downloading a copy of the book. And I see yours is in the Kindle format.
Yes, it is. And
so I always wind up downloading, whoever I have as the guest on the show, downloading it on my Kindle as well. So next week, Payday's Monday? Yeah, Payday's Monday. So so Monday or Tuesday, I will download The Dope Show Off the Leash as well, to support you as the artist, as well as to read the book. And let me ask you this about, we have a few more minutes in the interview, because I've had... years when the show first started, there's another colleague of mine. Matter of fact, we're still friends. I've been on her radio show. She was an author as well. I don't know if you know Erica Williams or not. Your past moniker. Anyway, Erica wrote a book, and it was racy. And I remember we were on the show, and she was telling me how, like, her neighbors read it and automatically assumed it was her. Now, some of the stuff may or may not have been her, but she said they started looking at her cross-eyed once they read her book. Have you had that experience that somebody... somebody now reads the verbiage or the language or the cursing or the scenes and now say, whoa, is that you?
I'll tell you what, my dad will be 73 on Monday and he still doesn't know the book exists. I'll tell him maybe in 10 years that I've achieved this accomplishment.
Yeah. Well, after Erica said,
maybe that answers it.
Yeah, her neighbors were like, she said they started avoiding her. I was like, wow.
I won't tell them. I'll let them hold on to that 7th and 8th grade poetry.
But I've had Christian authors. I've had Christian authors on the show who've had sex scenes in their book, and they would tell me about like their fellow church people, how they would turn on them. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, how did we all get here then? So no, they would say like, I have a sex scene in the book, and you know, the folks that I go to church with, or my pastor, this and that, they excommunicated me, or they said I couldn't do this anymore. I said, I don't get that. I don't understand that, because to me, that's like denial. That's not reality. That's just not real. It's just not. And
some people can't handle it. It's the truth. And the book is actually broken into 2 sections. The first section is called You Can't Handle, and the second section is called The Truth. Go figure. Go figure.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I tell you what, we're down to the last minute or so of the interview. I always turn the mic over to the guest. You can say anything in terms of how to get the book, how to get to you. The only thing you cannot say is a dollar amount. That folks will have to get from the Amazon site, or from your site, or from talking to you, whatever. But anything short of that, any book signings, where you're going to be, any spoken word appearances, the show next week on the 19th at the school, anything you want to promote or shout out anybody, feel free. I'm going to turn my mic off, and it's yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, and thank you for listening. The book is called The Dope Show Off the Leash, and it is available on Amazon.com. It's available in a softcover version, and it's available in a Kindle version. You could also find me on SoundCloud. My SoundCloud name is Ms. Ragz, MZRAGZ. Also, we are doing the show next week, the 19th, with our students, and you'll get to see our students perform if you'd like to come through at Napier Academy in Paterson, New Jersey. Those children will be doing spoken word that was written by myself, and they'll also be doing singing and choreography, and it'll be a great show. So please look forward and look for us at the show next week. If you can make it, that'd be great. If you want to find a copy of the book, that'd be great too, through Kindle or softcover. And again, it's a risque book. It's full of, surprises, and I guarantee you that it will keep your attention and keep you amazed. So thank you for listening. I appreciate this time with you guys, and it's been lots of fun. Thank you.
All right. Again, like I said, thank you for rising early with us. It's a Saturday, and we teachers, we want to get some rest, because all week long we have to get up and grind. So the fact that you got up early this morning to join us, I thank you so much, and I wish you nothing but the absolute best. And this song is playing now is the one that I said was influenced by Whitney Houston's Jesus Loves Me.
All right.
All right. Have a wonderfully blessed day, and we'll talk again.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Take care now. Well, that ends another edition of the Reading Circle with your host, Marc Medley. Like I said, we switched the time this morning, went from 7 to 8 instead of 6 to 7. And now we're going to put on the good news and song as we enter into the Martha and Friends Hour. Had a good time talking to Miss Ragland. Like, she's one of the teachers that works with me at the school. And she works with our children, our 5th graders. And like I said, working on the show, she worked on the show last year, and it was dynamite. And the show this year is expected to be dynamite as well. So as she said, if you're in the Paterson, New Jersey area, come on over next Friday to 55 Clinton Street. That is the address of the Reverend Dr. Frank Napier Jr. School of Technology. The children will be performing. A lot of the works written by Celeste Ragland, Harold Edgar, and others.